Alright, welcome to the Maya DVD. Before I start to animate in Maya, I prepare my Maya environment. I do that to make sure I have the right Maya settings. I also customize my environment to improve my workflow. And I will do that by working with layers, shelves, shortcuts, mail scripts, and tools. Now let's get started. First, I make sure I have the right Maya settings. So I go to Preferences, and there I go to Preferences Settings and make sure that the time here is on 25, because in Germany we work on PAL and it's important that it's 25 frames.
While demonstrating, I will use PAL. If you are in the US, you should use NTSC.
And 24 would be if I work on film. If I don't change that before I start to animate, then maybe it causes problems later. For example, if I animate with 10 frames per second, the final medium is 30 frames per second. So my animation would be 3 times as fast as it should, because now 10 frames are like 1 second, and then they would fit 3 times into 30 frames. So the speed would be 3 times as fast. So make sure this is switched to the right speed. So we put it on 25 now. Alright, let's go to timeline now. What I usually do, I switch on real-time 25 frames. Maya gives me always 25 frames per second. Sometimes probably I won't see all the frames, but this makes sure that it's always 1 second that I see. If you switch on play every frame, Maya doesn't care anymore about the 25 frames. It will play every frame. It doesn't matter how heavy your rig is or how many polygons you have. I usually don't use it. I use 25 frames real time. So people use that if they do some simulation, maybe with cloth or hair. What I also make sure that is switched on is continuous. And why? I will show you why. You see what happens if you have switched on that. And I don't want that. I want the timeline not to stop. I want to loop it all the time, so I can check the animation. But everybody has to find his own settings. Here is an example. If I put the settings play every frame, take a look how fast Maya plays the animation. So Maya tries to play all the frames as fast as possible. So we switch it back to real-time 25 frames. So the next setting that I make sure that is switched on is Update View. I put it to active, so Maya only updates the windows that is activated. If I activate all windows, then Maya tries to update all windows, and this may cause problems if your scene is very heavy. If you have a lot of polygons, a lot of animation, then Maya maybe have problems to update all the views because the hardware is not fast enough. So I make sure only one window is updated. Alright, next, something very small, but I think very helpful. We go to Interface, Help, and we'll make sure Tooltips is switched on. Because then, if I go somewhere, a window pops up which shows me what this button is for. So if it is switched off, I can wait a long time. It's just a little help. Now we go to Settings, Animation, and there we have tangents. And when I set a key, Maya wants to know what tangent the curve at that key has. And for me, I usually work with spline, so I put that to spline. Other people maybe work on linear or flat when they start to animate. And make sure weighted tangents is not switched on. Well, you can switch it on, but it's depending on your animation way. I don't work with it, and later I will explain why. And I think that's it for the preferences, so let's save it. One way to improve your workflow is to work with hotkeys. So I put commands onto hotkeys, so I don't have to go up to the window bar and search for the command. I just put it onto some hotkeys, for example on my left hand. All the important commands for animating are in the reach of my left hand. I have play stop timeline, and key. On my left 3 fingers. That's it. You can find the hotkeys under Windows, Preferences, Hotkeys. Basically here you can find the whole mapping for the whole keyboard mapping for Maya, and you can change it like you want. And there you can change your hotkeys or make new hotkeys. I can show to you here with my key command. It is Y, and I change it from S to Y, so it's faster for me to work with, and you can adjust it very easily. Just put in a new sign or put in string or alt and adjust your hotkeys like you need it. Basically, it's very simple. And the good thing about it is you can take your hotkeys with you. So if you work at another company, you always have your hotkeys with you. And you can find your hotkey file in your Maya prefs called user hotkeys. So another way to customize your Maya environment are shelf buttons, like you see here. You can put in a useful additional scripts, and you can add images, like you can see here, change image. Or you can put in your own meld scripts like character controls, or you can put in commands and Windows scripts. So for the selection of the controllers for the character, I go to the script editor. Usually I clear all first, select the commands from the script editor and move them here. And why I do that, maybe later I want to add something to that, maybe another controller. So I just take the commands and move them here. And don't forget to change that. And then I just move it from the script editor with the middle mouse button to the shelf. And usually I do that for the whole body, depending on what I need, maybe for the whole character, just the arms, just the feet, or the head. So what you should do, if you put a new script into the shelf editor, put in a name, and if you use that command more often, or that meld script, then an image would be very helpful. So if you don't put in names or images, you have a lot of commands and meld scripts, and later on you don't know what they are good for anymore. And what is also very useful, if I take commands from the main menu bar, I press Shift and string and go onto the command I want. There it is. You can also do it with Windows. Just press string and shift and select the window you want, and there it is, render window. So you can customize your shelves very easily. So what I usually do, I put in a shelf with all the commands that I usually use, then another shelf that is customized maybe just for animation, and then one shelf for the project. Another way to make your life more easy is to work with layers, as you can see here. This is a generic rig from the internet. It's from Miguel Gonzalez Vine. It's called Lowman, and you can download it from the internet. And like it is now, I don't like the layers. It's too complicated for me. So I try to delete them, but you see it doesn't work like that. So a little trick. I go to the outliner with a shortcut for the outliner. And here I search the layers, select them all, and delete them. That's it. Switch back. And what I do now, I generate 2 new layers. One layer for the body, this means for the polygons, and one layer for the controllers. You can also assign a color for each layer, quite helpful. And also maybe one for the stuff I don't want to see. Let's call it no. So what we assign is this thing at the hip. Later it's can be quite helpful, but for now we don't want to see it. So assign it to the layer and make it invisible. So if I select the whole body, I assign the body to the layer, just assign it, and then I can make it visible or invisible, toggle it, or make it reference. So it's visible, but I can't select it. Very helpful. And now I can't select the body anymore. even though if I select the controllers. That's a good thing, so I don't select something on accident that I don't want to select. And we don't want that, so put it back on reference and select all the controllers and assign it to the controller layer. And now all the controllers are in that layer, so I can make it visible or invisible. And that's the setup for my layers. Another work improvement is, take a look here in the window on show. In the show panel, you can hide or unhide special types of objects like lights, polygons, NURBS, bones or whatever. We switch all on and now we see that there's a rig and I don't want to see that. So what I do for the perspective window, I make a script that makes the right selection straight away. So we don't have to go there and switch everything on and off all the time. The script is doing that for us. So we go to the script editor and we clear everything and we make echo all commands on, and then we first make none, and then we go there and just select what we want. Then we copy those commands and put them into the shelf. The script is doing, I switch everything on, press that button and see exactly that selections that I copied into the shelf. And don't forget, put a name under it so you find your script back, save it. What you also can do, you can customize your window layout so you don't have to switch between windows all the times or open or close them. So modelers need another layout than animators. Animators, for example, need windows like graph editor, perspective window or camera window, and the timeline, sure. You can use the layout that Maya provides, or you can customize it. And we do that in order not to open and close windows all the time or switch between windows. And you can create a melt script, and that's what we do now. You go to panels, and here you can adjust your layout like you want it. The basic layout, like 4 windows, 3 windows, you can choose that layout, and then you can choose which window should contain which panel. So something for that is interesting for lighters or shaders, and the layout like that is more interesting for an animator. So, but what I don't want is that hypershade to be in that window, so I change it. You do it here, and you just go, and I want side panel. That's it. So that's a good layout for me. So Maya remembers your layout here, so you can always bring it back. So that's what I want. You can change it here, and you can also change it, the panels and the layout here. So let's go to the main animation tool, the graph editor. The graph editor visualizes animation in form of particular values at a particular time. This is the time, and the value is this one. So X is time, and Y is the value. I put a key at 0, and I put a key here. So let's see what happens in the graph editor. It's the X rotation. The value changes over time. So your animation is visually represented by keys and curves. The keys describe mainly translation, rotation, and scale values of objects and controls at a precise time. Here in the channel box you can see attributes. Normally it's rotation, translation, and scale attributes. But you can also limit the attributes. You can delete them or make them invisible. So you have a special amount of attributes on your object. You can see them in the channel box. So let's put some keys on this controller, because then we have all attributes in the graph editor. So let's make 3 keys, 0, 13 and 25, and here you can see the curves. can adjust your animation or the position of the character by moving that keys. So if I move the character in the scene and make a key, you see the result in the graph edit. So the curves describe the path of movement between keys, and you can adjust them by the tangents. Here you can see the tangent. You can adjust how fast, for example, the animation comes in, or the curves comes to the key, or how slow, depending on the angle you adjust on the key. And on the normal settings, if I change one side, the other side is changing too, but we can change that. Just select the key and break, for example, the tangent. So the in and out tangent can be different. As for me, I never use that breaking the tangent. I always use the standard settings. So let's get rid of it and make it spline again. So there are in and out tangents, and they can have different angles. They describe with what speed you hit a key pose. So there are different types of standard tangents, like spline, linear, flat, stepped. You can see here, if I press spline, Maya tries to apply a spline tangent. Make linear, see? He tries the fastest way from one key to the other. If I do stepped, it says that this key is 100% until it jumps to the next key. And sometimes I use that for the blocking to show to the director. Especially directors who worked in 2D before, they like the type of visualization of the blocking. So the tangent presets I usually use are spline, linear, and flat. Sometimes also stepped. And flat tangents means that Maya tries to, or is putting the tangent parallel to the x-axis. This means to the time. And what you get is a slow in and a slow out. The same here. Alright, so let's talk about weighted and non-weighted tangents. Weighted tangents enables you to adjust keys by pulling the tangents out or in. You can do it like that. You switch it on, and then you can pull the tangents. You can modify your curves with not a lot of keys. And because usually I don't animate in the graph editor, I have problems by just putting in new keys. So here you can see what happens if I prepare the key with weighted tangents in the graph editor and then put in a new key, then my curve is destroyed. So I have to go back and adjust it again. But if you work in the graph editor a lot, then I think maybe it's a good opportunity to adjust your curves. I change the tangent here and I put a key 9, and as you can see the curve is destroyed, so I have to go back and adjust it. But I don't want to take care about that. That's not the way I work. So you can easily destroy weighted tangents. And what also happens if I, for example, select my modified weighted tangent and I go to the preset and make a spline or a step, then my whole settings are lost. Here's something else that you should be aware of. You have time snap on and off, and I usually switch that on. So I have keys on full frames. And what happens if you have keys between main frames? Then this can cause problems when rendering the image in the motion blur, for example. Take a look here. It's an extreme, and we don't see that while scrubbing through the timeline, but in the rendering you will see that the motion blur will do weird stuff. And that's why Maya is taking the information from in between full frames. Another problem that might happen if you work, for example, with rotations, and the first frame is 0, and the next frame has the value 360, then the rotation is 360 degrees, and it seems that the character is at the same position. But if you take a look in the graph editor, it isn't. Here you see, it's rotating. And this can cause problems in the rendering also, especially in the motion blur. So this is something you should be aware of. And something else, you can put in keys. You can move the keys, as you can see, through time. What else you can do? You can put in values for X and Y, and you also can put some more keys at the same time and put them to the same value. Or you can not only translate in the graph editor, you can also scale curves. And here's another tool, and you can use it like a lattice box. You just select some keys, and then you select those controllers and can modify the curve as needed. But usually I only use translate and not scaling or that special lattice box tool. What else could be interesting is post-infinity and pre-infinity. You can visualize how it shows what is happening after your last and your first key, and you can tell Maya what to do with it. You can cycle it, and usually it is on constant. And if you put in cycle, for example, Maya is cycling the animation after the last key. You can also do it before first key, and that's pre-cycle. The thing is post-cycle. And you can use that especially for walk cycles. Okay, that's the main things in the graph editor. Let's go to the timeline. The timeline shows you the amount of times you have for your animation in frames, and you can adjust that. We put in 5 here at the beginning, and we stop at frame 50. So in the outer boxes you define the main time, and in the inner boxes you can zoom in or zoom out, so you can get more detailed. So the outer boxes, main animation time, on the inner boxes, a special amount of time within the main time. Yeah, and you can do that either by typing in numbers into the boxes or by moving those controllers. So you can get very close and just take a look at some frames within a big time range. What you also can do, you can speed up or slow down the animation by selecting the keys and scaling them with that tool. And you press the shift button and move over your timeline, and there you have this red controller. And you have handles, and by moving that handles you can either scale or move the keys. For me, I use that all the time, and it's so much faster than going to the graph editor and selecting the keys there and scaling it, and so I can do it in the timeline straight away. But what is happening when I scale the keys? They get closer to each other, and also they leave their position from the full frames, and they jump maybe between full frames. And in order to eliminate that, what you can do, you can select them, press the right mouse button and go to snap. So Maya tries to move the keys that are between full frames, tries to move them onto full frames. But sometimes it doesn't work, and it doesn't work because Maya doesn't know how to move the keys to the full frame, because maybe another key is in front of it or before it, so he's not getting past it. Maybe you need to do some work by hand to get rid of that. And what I also do, for example, if I have a key here, I can select it and move it, or I can copy it with the right mouse button, copy, and then right mouse button, paste, or you can cut it and put it somewhere else by pasting it. What I usually do, if I have a position of a key, so if I go with the left mouse button to a position where I want that key from 20 to be, so if I go with the middle mouse button to that position, everything stays the same, like on that position 20, and then I just can set key, and I have the key from 20 now on 43. But you can do the same with right mouse button, copy the key, go somewhere, right mouse button, paste the key. But I think it's just too much time doing that. You are much faster if you just go somewhere, the mouse button, and move there where you want it to be and key there. All right, another tool that we should talk about is the dope sheet. Usually I don't use it, but I think it's very powerful, especially for some special tasks. I show you an example. We select those keys on the hand, the fingers, and we put a key on 0 and on 20. So we close them, but they do it at the same time. So what we want to do, we want to open them one after each other. And the dope sheet is a good tool to do that. So let's select the controllers one after each other. And now we see the keys in the dope sheet. And what we do, we will move those keys for each finger a little bit further. So this means that they close a little bit later. And as you can see, they open and close at different times. And the dope sheet is very powerful for doing stuff like that. That's it for customizing Maya, improving your workflow, and introducing you to some basic Maya tools, some animation tools, the basic Maya settings that you should use, or you should be aware of adjusting them before you start to animate. So let's move on and start with the animation part.